see a lot of scripture on there, but I'm actually going to read you one that isn't on there. Romans 8:35 through 39 is the scripture that I'll be reading. Who will separate us from the love of Christ? Will hardship or distress or persecution or famine or nakedness or peril or sword? As it is written, for your sake we are being killed all day long. We are counted as sheep to be slaughtered. No, in all these things we are more than conquerors through him who loved us. For I am convinced that neither death nor life, nor angels, nor rulers, nor things present, nor things to come, nor powers, nor height, nor depth, nor anything else in all creation will be able to separate us from the love of God in Christ Jesus our Lord. This is the word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God.
Some people question why I have everything scripted, but if you ever talk to me, you know that I can get off on tangents, and if I get off on tangents, we're not going back to the original subject material. So that's why I've got everything scripted. Before I begin, I have some thank yous to attend to. I'd like to thank everybody for showing up this morning. I know for a fact that one can determine how great his friends are simply by the time they're willing to wake up for him. I have some pretty great friends by that standard. I'd like to thank my parents for driving themselves and our dog, or as they like to call her, my sister, down to see me. You guys have supported me in everything. I can never say it or show it or repay it, but you guys are the biggest blessings I will ever have in my life. To my grandparents, you mean the world to me. Having you here is so filling to my spirit to truly overcome with joy. And finally, to the church body, you have opened your doors, fed me, and made me one of your own. This is momentous in my life. I will never forget or take for granted the hospitality you've shown me here. Thank you so much. Now that my Academy Award speech is over, I guess we can move on to the reason y'all asked me here. If you attended this morning thinking that a religion student from a prestigious university was going to deliver a theologically packed sermon with impressive words and ideas that have been tossed around by fathers of the faith for millennia, I don't know if I'll be able to satisfy you. If you decided to wake up and go hear a college student preach about things he's learned in the classroom from inspiring professors who have guided him through difficult material, then I may not be your man, although I have had those types of professors. However, if you're here to hear a boy sift through truths that he's come to minutely understand through his brokenness and through his toughest times and through desperately not having it all together, I'm glad you're here. You see, while I pray that at least one of you walks away today having learned or remembered something or having been changed for the better, what I'm going to be talking about is something that, whether you need to hear it or not, I need to hear it, and I need to hear it every single day. So as much as I hope you lean in and listen, this sermon is just meant for me as much as it is for y'all. After finals week of my freshman year, after everything was packed up, after I was ready to tell everyone how I made it through my first year of college with flying colors, I was being held by my mom in my freshman dorm room, breaking down, sobbing, frustrated, angry, and lost. It's a position I've been in before, and God bless her because she knows when I get to crying, the tears, along with the snot, it just starts flowing, and I am not a pretty crier by any means. Everything I thought I knew about myself was actually a forgery, and who I was had vanished. My identity, it felt like I'd lost it. I'd gone through reconstructive surgery on my ACL. My grades weren't where they ought to have been. I wasn't with my family when I felt like they needed me, and I was still struggling to find a church home. Brendan Voss, the athlete, gone. Brendan Voss, the top of his class, gone. Brendan Voss, the supporter, gone. Brendan Voss, the Christian, struggling. The summer following my freshman year, I was still looking in the mirror, and the brown eyes that were looking back at me were the eyes of a stranger. But the summer following my freshman year, I learned that this is a problem that many of us have, even the youngest of us, as I was a camp counselor for 7 to 12-year-old boys at a church camp outside of Tulsa, Oklahoma. We talked about labels and identities. My campers revealed to me how they thought they were stupid, too smart, fat, too small, unathletic, unloved, unaccepted, the wrong pigment of skin, hated, and other words that they believed defined who they are. Throughout our sessions, we would teach our campers that this is not who they are, and rather they are not defined by worldly descriptions, but defined by what God has to say about them. A lesson that I seemingly neglected to apply to my own life at that point in time. School rolled back around, and I was still left in a dazed fog as to who I really was. But a song changed that. Performed by house fires, the chorus of Good, Good Father reverberated through me. You're a good, good father. It's who you are. It's who you are. It's who you are. And I am loved by you. It's who I am. It's who I am. It's who I am. For my whole life up until that point, I just understood God's love for humanity as something that only mattered when it came to salvation, or that it was some nice attribute of who God is. But it's who we are. We're the beloved. His love defines us. It reinvents our very makeup because His love changes everything. Before moving more deeply into this defining feature, I'd like to explore some other things that define who we are because of God making a new creation in us. You are a purposeful being, for you have been made with purpose. Purpose is important to identity, for we often associate purposelessness with meaninglessness. And being a college student is the perfect time to freak out about what your purpose is in life. As a late teen, early 20-year-old, you're expected to make a decision on a major and minor, feeling as if you picked the wrong one, you've seemingly messed up your entire life. You've got grades to keep up with, organizations, building resumes and relationships, fraternities, sororities, boyfriends and girlfriends, parents to call, and much more. Everything weighs down on you, and everything demands that you devote your time, energy, and talents to all of it, all at once. In all the mess of life, it gets murky trying to discern the answer to the question, what exactly am I meant to do? Jeremiah 29:11 says, God has a plan to prosper me, but what does that even mean? If you haven't read Blood Does, I encourage you to pick it up immediately, because the author, Bob Goff, gives a masterful answer. He explains our purpose this way. God asks what it is He's made us to love, what it is that captures our attention, what feeds that deep, indescribable need of our souls to experience the richness of the world He made. And then leaning over us, He whispers, let's go do that together. It's not all planned out for us either, and that's where most people get too nervous to take the next step. But know this, when Jesus invites us on an adventure, He shapes who we become with what happens along the way. Romans 8:28 tells us that God works good in all things for those who love Him. Your purpose is to be the means and the ends of that good. Your God has given you desires so that you may pursue them in a righteous and full manner, and that you may experience the good He has for you. And along the way, be the means of that good. Be the vessel of His goodness to others. The only occupation He invites you to fill is your life, and to live it fully. Your purpose is not an occupation, but your purpose is to love the Father. When you live out that purpose, you bring others to understand that it is their purpose as well. Next, you are pursued. You're never forgotten or alone. God makes it a point throughout His Word, as in Deuteronomy 31:6, to assure us that we are never forgotten or forsaken, and that He's never not with us. However, it still seems at times in our lives like an insurmountable reality that we're alone. I just lost a friend this past week to suicide, and while I may not understand the depths of depression fully, I do know how loneliness feels. But no matter how many times you feel the bleakness of loneliness, whether you see it or feel it, you are always being pursued. For example, my sweet grandmother. When my grandfather, who'd experienced plenty of hardship in his life up to this point, was courting my grandmother, he experienced a big red-headed mountain of an obstacle. Her father, my great-granddad. My great-granddad, he loved my grandmother and wanted what was best for her, as all good fathers do. He just didn't think that included Jim Posey. My grandmother would have had ample opportunity to think that their relationship was dead in the water. My great-granddad did almost everything he could to make sure that they didn't see each other. But whether she knew it or not, whether she felt it, my daddy Jim never stopped pursuing her. Now they're Mr. and Mrs., a big reason why I'm here, and they comprehend the importance of the idea of two being better than one, found in Ecclesiastes 4, 9 through 12. For they have fallen down and held each other up their entire marriage. There are times in our lives where, because of circumstances, our own mistakes, or other people, we are left feeling by our lonesome. But God, like the ever-waiting bridegroom of the beloved, never stops pursuing us. You may not understand, you may not see, but remember, that's just the way love works. As in John 9, it seeks us out, it finds us, and it embraces us. All it requires is our acceptance of it, and it promises to fill our life. Because of the Father's pursuit of us and not our pursuit of Him, are we able to live in Him. Endlessly and relentlessly pursue people in your life the way God pursues us. You can be the moon in someone's night, reflecting the love of the sun into their life. You are accepted. Now, before any of you start to moan and groan and start to have the thought that now is the good time to catch up on the hour you lost sleeping last night, all because you think this is a message on tolerance, it's nothing of the sort. Too often, we as an English-speaking people neglect to differentiate between the two. Acceptance and toleration are not two things that necessarily go hand in hand. Since I seem to be stuck on the love stories of my family, let's use my parents as an example. My dad has a lively personality, one that smiles and laughs and lives life in the best way. But that liveliness used to be a fieriness that was a little out of hand. My dad, like a good number of bosses, could have a tempestuous temper. He smoked them if he had them and drank them if they were cold. He lived life on the edge. I think mainly because life had pushed him there, seeing if he would jump or not. But then this boss of a man met an angel of a woman in my mom. Their first date, my mom took him to a high school football game, which to people who are from and understand West Texas, that's the equivalent to God's game. My dad promptly knew he was going to marry this sweetheart. After 3 months, they were engaged and have been happily married for 25 years. My dad's a completely different man today than he was. All because my mom accepted him because she loved him, but at the same time refused to tolerate him because of that same love. She knew the way he acted might have floated in his boat, but it definitely wasn't going to float in their boat. Chris Lyons, who for the life of me, I can't tell you who he is. I tried looking him up. He might be a pastor, might be a theologian. I really can't tell you, but I like what he has to say. So that's all that matters at this point. But he says that Jesus says, I love you just the way you are, and I love you too much to let you stay the way you are. No story could exemplify this further than John 8, 1 through 11. The Pharisees bring a woman before Jesus, exclaiming that this woman committed adultery and that the law says she ought to be condemned. What do you have to say, Jesus? Jesus says, let he without sin throw the first stone. Let he who is without condemnation be the first to condemn. And everyone leaves. For no man, no matter how orange-skinned and famous hair, no man is without sin. No man is without guilt. Leaving just the two of them there, Jesus asked, does no man condemn you? None. Neither do I. Now most people stop there. Most people stop at 11a, but there's an 11b, which says, go on your way and sin no more. Jesus accepts us, but he cannot tolerate our sin. A life with him is a life where you stand in the center of his court with everyone and everything else gone, and he does not raise his fists in condemnation, but he reaches out his hand in love and acknowledgement and says, leave behind the things that are killing you. Leave behind the things that are bringing you death. Leave behind the things that are keeping you from me and my Father. Accept people, but don't tolerate the things that lead to a life apart from God. The final thing, something we mentioned previously, is that we are loved. Recently, I saw the film Risen, and it reminded me of two things. The first thing being that I often gloss over God's love. During the movie, I realized that I'd gotten to the point where God's love for me was just something that I read about and I heard about it. It was hardly something I relished in. I'd been living as if God's love was just a portrait. Yeah, it looks nice and it sounds nice and ooh, that's pretty, but it's not really alive. At least that's what it felt like to me. I'd forgotten that God's love lives and breathes in his creation, namely you and me. As evidenced in 1 John 4:11-12, the early joining church community realized that to love one another is to allow God's love to flow through us into others and into the world. God's love is a living love. Risen along with love does reminded me of something else. It reminded me of how love is made evident through presence. My dad gave up promotions and he gave up a lot of other life opportunities just so he could see me at every game, just so he could see me at every performance, concert, whatever it was I was doing. He gave up a lot just so he could be there. And I bet you if I was to call out attendance at everything I'd ever done for the people that I wanted there, my dad wouldn't just raise his hand politely and say, here. I bet my dad would stand on top of his seat and yell, that's my son. I think God does the same for you and I. When Jesus walked this earth, he was Emmanuel, God with us. He didn't want to miss a beat. He wanted to be with his people and do life with them, just like today. And when he suffered and ultimately died on the cross, it wasn't a polite hand raise to the rest of the world saying, I'm here. That was God standing on top of creation and yelling to the whole world, you're my child, and I love you. 1 John 3:1 reassures us that we are, and he does. Don't fall into the pit of thinking that God's love is a dead love, for it lives inside of you waiting to be expressed. Don't think God's love isn't present in your life. He's never stooped down from his seat. He's never stopped yelling from the top of his creation. Now, if you've read the title of the message, you've only got one question left. What in the world does this have to do with keys? Well, back in high school, after I got my pickup, and even still today, I would never leave my keys in the same place. My mom would always get on to me about how if you leave them in the same spot, you'll never have to waste 5 minutes looking for them right before you want to get somewhere. I never really lost my keys though, I always found them. I didn't really lose them. I'd only misplaced them. And every time I wanted to go somewhere, I had a hard time getting going because I misplaced the very thing that I needed to start out. I guess that's what happened in my freshman dorm room last spring. I never really lost my identity. I'd only misplaced it. And when I wanted to get going and change the world, it took me a while because I had to look for the very thing that I needed before I started out. The next time you get going to change the world and you think you've lost your identity, you didn't. You just misplaced it. The next time, place your identity in knowing that you are purposeful, you are pursued, you are accepted, and you are loved. Truly, you are loved. And nothing of this world, and nothing of heaven can ever change that. Thanks be to God.